Let's get to the news. First off, Alyssa, I have a small anecdote. So we're going to talk about what's going on with the GOP in the House. But first, I just want to acknowledge the Dobbs case that is about to come before the Supreme Court. It's a huge deal. We're going to talk about it. I've been thinking about abortion rights and the fact that Roe is in the crosshairs. And I've been typing the word abortion a lot into my phone as the result of that. And today, Alyssa, I sent a text to somebody where I forgot the N at the end of the word. So it looked like I was talking about abortio, which sounds like a minor Shakespearean character instead of a fundamental reproductive right. So that was like my one moment of levity in this very depressing moment in like reproductive choice. But first, let's talk a little bit about the bitches who cannot govern and will not govern, and will do anything they can to avoid the work of governing. Not vacuuming, not healthy things. They're doing destructive, democracy-ruining shit. So I want to talk about, I guess we have to talk about Kevin McCarthy.
That dumb bitch.
Alyssa, how would you describe what is happening in the House Republican caucus right now?
I mean, I don't know. I almost want to, like, are they, like, they're on the run, but, like, who are they on the run from? Their own base? It's like they are, how do you even explain it, Erin? They are in a place where aliens coming to America make more sense than what's happening in Washington, D.C. Erin, they're saying that, like, January 6th didn't happen.
We all saw it, guys.
It's hard to put that specific genie back in the bottle. And
Yeah.
they are the equivalent of every TikTok that you see of some like little kid who's being interrogated about whether they ate the last brownie on the platter. And they're like, no, I didn't. And the crumbs are stuck to their face and to their shirt. That is the GOP right now.
Yeah, it's really quite bad. We have Kevin McCarthy, who the Bakersfield weenie himself, just an extremely ineffective leader who is not very good at taking a stand and sticking to it, who is now saying he opposes a commission looking into January 6th after Democrats and Republicans have already negotiated the terms of what that commission would look like, after Democrats already gave Republicans concessions in those negotiations. Now he says he doesn't want to do it because the commission won't investigate other protests that didn't happen on January 6th.
Right.
That's like trying to cancel a murder investigation because other murders happened, and that, you know what I mean?
No, it's like trying to cancel a murder investigation because jaywalking happened somewhere.
That's true. That's true, because Antifa did not kill cops.
No.
Weirdly.
And you know what's kind of amazing? Don't you want to know where like Mike Pence's head is at with all this stuff? Because all these people are basically saying like those crazy rioter murderers came from Mike Pence. And if you're Mike Pence, are you like, I don't know, it really kind of did happen, you guys. It really did happen.
It's all very pathetic to me. And then, we also have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I feel weird every time I talk about her because she's so unimportant. She's less important in Congress in terms of her actual power than many like a high-level staffer of Nancy Pelosi. A high-level staffer of Nancy Pelosi has more actual power in Congress than Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is not on any committees.
My favorite thing, it's like, I think the only way to describe that MTG person is the way that AOC did.
I mean, this is a woman that's deeply unwell and clearly needs some help.
Yeah, she does seem unwell, but I also don't want to pretend that, like, she just seems like a malignant asshole. Like, there is something
that too.
Something that it's like not diagnosable. There is no medicine that you can give somebody to cure them from the fact that they are a malignant asshole. But she is just like a malignant asshole who doesn't really seem to have anything to offer anybody. Yeah, so she sucks. And then we have Matt Gaetz, who sits on the Judiciary Committee still.
He super sucks.
He super sucks, despite the fact that one of his close associates just pled guilty to 6 counts that range from stalking to conspiracy to defraud the CARES Act to soliciting and facilitating underage prostitution and providing said prostitute with drugs, who she was 17 at the time, to stealing people's identities in Florida so that he can use their fake IDs for his underage prostitutes. He stole his boat dealer's ID, Alyssa.
I am ready for my Experian alert that tells me I have a sex offender in my premises, because that is the only place that Matt Gaetz is going to graduate to, if not straight to prison.
Yeah, the guilty plea that his attorneys filed on Monday really doesn't look good for Gaetz.
Couldn't happen to a bigger dick.
Still sits on the judiciary. Still on the Judiciary Committee. Liz Cheney has been removed from leadership for saying that that the truth happened. Matt Gaetz literally probably hired an underage prostitute, and he's on the judiciary.
As a sitting congressman.
Yeah, good
Yikes.
leadership. Good leadership. And meanwhile, I think, we're talking about the sort of scumbag league of the House GOP caucus. And there's some also-rans. We have Madison Cawthorn, who has been well established as a serial sex creep when he was spending his one semester in college, where I think he got like a 2.6 GPA or something like that, before dropping out to become a lawmaker. Great. People have kind of forgotten about him, even though he faked training for the Paralympics, even though he did all that sex creepiness. He's tried so hard to be the headline grabber, and he just can't grab the headlines because he's being upstaged. We also have Lauren Boebert. She's sort of a dime store Sarah Palin, but with more guns and less charisma.
Yeah.
Trying so hard to be the one triggering the libs, and she just can't.
That's what it is. They're trying, all of them, so hard. And just get a new shtick. It's all just, all just a shtick.
Yeah, and it sort of reminds me of that old Onion article from the late 90s, if you can believe it. It's like Marilyn Manson now just going door to door trying to shock people. It's like, it's just tiresome at this point. You guys, their job is to make laws. They have clearly no agenda, no plan, no ideology.
It might be like a little different if we weren't in like a global pandemic where millions of Americans were put out of work. I mean, they're like actual massive problems to solve. Mm-hmm. And they are like more concerned with doing Zooms surrounded by multiple guns.
It's very weird, and a lot of them seem like people that I would not trust to work a menial job. Like if I were a manager at a place where the job was to literally like wipe down counters over and over again, I would be like, I don't trust these people to be able to follow instructions,
I would not let Matt Gaetz pump my septic, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good way to end this conversation. Oh, real quick, I want to do a ironic toast. And I want to start it off by saying, well. Susan Collins' Maine Senate campaign has been implicated in a illegal financing scheme. The campaign itself denies knowledge that a corporation was funneling money illegally into the campaign through like a Hawaii defense contractor.
Yeah, super weird.
Yeah, it's one of those things where my eyes glaze over and I'm like, you guys figure it out and then just tell me what happens. But yeah, it's very, very weird. And then the other Tish James, your girl.
Well.
Since you're in New York, announced on Tuesday that the investigation into the Trump Organization is now criminal, not just civil. So that's happening.
It's happening. And I mean, let me talk about a slow burn. She just doesn't quit.
Yeah, I would not mess with her. I'm just going to go ahead and say Tish James, I would not mess with her. And yeah, so I'm interested to see who's going to be charged with something. I've seen legal watchers talk about how it wouldn't make sense for Tish James to make such an announcement unless they were getting close to being able to file charges.
none of this is going to be made public unless she's got an ironclad case. That is how I feel. She's like measure twice, cut once. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, and I am really excited to see when this cut happens, because it felt sort of like there was a planetary shift this week where all of a sudden all of this stuff happened on the same day. Like it was like I would love to talk to an astrologer who can tell me what the stars mean for crazy political events. Not because I believe that astrology is real, but I just think it's interesting to be like, what are the planets?
You know, I love a good chart.
Yes, I want to know the chart of whatever happened on Tuesday, because that seems weird. Okay, we are going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we are going to talk about the depressing Supreme Court Roe v. Wade abortion news with a person who, more than just about anybody, can tell us what's really going on. So, longtime listeners of this show might remember that on our very first episode, we had to re-record the news segment because right after we got done recording, Anthony Kennedy had announced his retirement from the Supreme Court. And when we came back together, we talked about how worried we were that it spelled the beginning of the end for abortion rights in this country. Well, it seems that a troubling announcement from the Supreme Court this week means we may be close to the end of abortion rights in this country. When the Supreme Court announced that it had agreed to hear a case involving a Mississippi abortion ban, people freaked out because that case directly challenges Roe v. Wade. And we really think it's important that more people have their hair on fire about this, because this is not a drill. So here today to help us better understand the stakes and help us wade through this emotional roller coaster is the current sitting president of NARAL Pro Choice America. Welcome back to the show, Ilyse Hogue.
Thanks for having me, gals.
Thank you so much for being here. You were the first person we wanted to talk to when we heard that this case was being heard by the court. So for those who might not understand, can you explain how the outcome of the Mississippi case will affect the future of Roe v. Wade? And why does the threat feel more real this time?
Yeah, I mean, so with all the caveats that I am actually not a lawyer, but I am surrounded by great ones, my understanding of the sort of legal elements of this case is that there is no way to uphold the Mississippi law without overturning Roe. So it's basically your thumbs up, thumbs down vote on Roe v. Wade. I think that part of what's happening here is people I know, I'll speak in my I statements as I've been taught. I'm grappling with the fact that, we did everything that we could possibly do in terms of like flipping the Senate and like getting the House back and getting rid of, Donald Trump. And we're really left with the stark reminder that his legacy is this court, and that in fact the extreme forces, including and especially anti-choice forces that put him into office, got what they wanted. And they have every ability to follow through with ending, as you said, legal abortion rights. And we're really careful to say it that way because you don't end abortion, as we know from pre-Roe. You just end abortion rights and put it out of reach from some people and make it a lot more dangerous for others.
Mm-hmm. Ilyse, SCOTUS did not agree to take up big abortion cases before the 2020 election. Why are they doing so now? Do you think it's possible, contrary to Susan Collins' attestations and their Senate confirmation testimony, that Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Gorsuch don't consider Roe settled law?
I mean, we've been saying that since the day that they stonewalled Merrick Garland, that this was endgame for them in a long con, honestly, that started with the formation of the Federalist Society in 1982, when that right-wing organization made hostility to Roe the litmus test for entry. And absolutely, I think they believe they have what they need to fulfill that long goal. And I would say a couple things about it. I would say, A, nobody should be fooled that is the end goal, right? On multiple levels. A, they're not interested in sending the question of abortion back to the states, although even if they did, most states are incredibly hostile and would take action immediately to criminalize abortion. But they're actually interested in an all-out federal ban on abortion. But B, hostility to Roe is always mapped onto hostility to other forms of social progress, so they're just getting started. And the question that you asked, Alyssa, is one I think everyone should pay really close attention to because it points to just how politicized the right wing has made the court. And not only did they get their justices, but they protected the GOP in the 2020 election because they know what their justices are being called upon to do is not popular, and they would be punished for it politically. And they're trying to do it now because they think it's early enough before 2024 that people will adjust to a new normal and they might not pay as big a price for it in the upcoming elections. I think they're wrong based on my experience. I think people are really frustrated and angry by the sort of overreach of the GOP in service of an extraordinarily extreme base. And I think they will pay a political price, but they're trying to do everything they can to guard against that.
Usually when I read about a case that has alarm bell headlines, I immediately react by saying like, oh, it's actually not as bad as the headlines say. But the more I find out about Dobbs, this case, this more afraid I get. Like the fact that it directly challenges Roe's viability standard is really frightening to me. Can you talk a little bit about what the Mississippi law actually does and why banning later, quote unquote, later term abortions is something that should make people who care about reproductive rights scared? Like, under what circumstances do people get later term abortions, and what does banning them mean to people who might need them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is sort of their like too cute by half, have their cake and eat it too, right? Because the Mississippi law bans abortion at 15 weeks of pregnancy. And then they're going to trot out and be like, well, if you didn't know, you couldn't make responsible decisions by the time you were 15 weeks pregnant, you know, you have no right to make those decisions, which is total. Am I allowed to say am I allowed to be which is total horseshit. Right? Yeah. Because the same forces make it increasingly difficult to get abortion early in pregnancy. They like go out of their way to make contraception hard to get. They go out of their way to make like accurate sexual education out of reach in the schools. And then they're like, but these people wait too long. You know, you're talking about a state with one remaining clinic to serve the entire population. You're also, so you've got people who are pushing termination of pregnancy later into that pregnancy because it's just out of reach for them. They have to travel, they have to get money together, right? Like there's financial barriers, why we need to repeal Hyde. And then there's also like people learn things later in pregnancy that affect their ability to think about themselves as parents, period, full stop. Sometimes that's a medical diagnosis. Sometimes it's something to do with your partner. There are all sorts of health conditions for the pregnant person that might actually affect their pregnancy. They're just like actual considerations that kick into play later on, even if you had access early, which many people don't because of all of the barriers that the same people put into play that are now banning abortion at 15 weeks.
Mm-hmm. And I think Texas is trying to ban it at 6 weeks.
Yeah, and Alabama did 2 weeks. I mean, this is just, you know, this goes back to my point. Yeah.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
You don't even know at that point.
I mean, this goes back to my point that they're just, they are straight up interested in criminalizing abortion federally. And they're playing a fun little game with slippery slopeness here, you know, and I'm guessing one of the reasons that they accepted the Mississippi case is because they feel like it can sound reasonable, right? But then like once you close that aperture, what comes next? Mm-hmm. And it's not reasonable. And we should be screaming from the rooftops that it's not reasonable. And we should absolutely point out that the very same people who are claiming that people should know are and have made their decisions are the ones that are making those decisions out of reach.
And that's the thing, Ilyse. You know, there are reports that anywhere from, 15 to 22 states could ban abortion if this case is decided, that the average woman of childbearing age now drives about 36 miles to get to a clinic. If SCOTUS kills Roe v. Wade, it could be over 250 miles for them to drive to a clinic. Abortions will still happen. They will just be incredibly unsafe. Abortion is popular in America. So what are the Republicans doing? It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, certainly what is popular is the idea that decisions about if and when and how we expand our families do not belong in the hands of politicians who don't even understand basic science, much less know anything about our individual circumstances, and that all people should have access to legal abortion in their own communities. People do not believe that you should have to drive so far and find childcare, because the majority of people seeking abortion are already parents taking care of the families that they have. So you're absolutely correct that it's entirely unpopular what they're doing. I mean, look, this is actually the GOP project right now. It is minority control. It is minority rule. Imposing their will and their ideology on the majority of us through court capture, through voter suppression, having weaponized abortion as a tool, using disinformation to maintain power in a changing world and keep families the way they want them to look, keep women in our place. I mean, this has been their project since the late 60s, and they're at the pinnacle of it. And I think the only question is how many of us will rise up and stop them.
Yeah, it's really upsetting. And I think, sometimes just thinking on abortion, it's one of those, and I don't, it's very common, and so I don't believe it should be this way, but I believe that it is this way. It's one of those unpleasant, quote unquote, topics that people don't really discuss freely. And so I think that there's a general lack of understanding of how common it is and how many people have had it, how many people might need it, how many people might need, their daughter might need it, or, a friend of theirs might need it, or their partner might need it. I just think the fact that we don't talk about how common it is means that people don't understand how many people are in the crosshairs. Literally half the population is, now at the mercy of these people who probably couldn't even describe what the placenta does. Tell me how long between ovulation and implantation. How does that work? Describe pregnancy. None of these people could describe any of the processes that happen. Or when is a pregnant woman tested for gestational diabetes? At what point? If you can't tell me that, what the fuck are you doing? Trying to regulate it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're making 2 points. One is the right-wing extreme is anti-science, anti-family, anti-enlightenment. We always say their approach towards abortion rights and reproductive health care generally was the canary in the coal mine. We saw that on steroids through COVID, where they discarded science and had massive impact, right? And I always think if we had stood up and yelled louder when they were actually supplanting ideology for science and reproductive health policy, maybe we wouldn't have gotten to where we got, when it comes to COVID. But I think the other thing that you're saying is literally the conclusion of the book that I wrote, The Lie That Binds, which is the silence of the majority is their most potent weapon. And in fact, one of the things I wrote on Twitter the other day is everybody should be asking every Republican candidate from city council all the way up to president to defend the GOP position on abortion, because it is so extreme at this point. It is so extreme, and they don't want to talk about it. They want to talk about it behind closed doors with their base, but they do not want to have a public debate about it. And so our guidance has always been from the peer-to-peer level. We do trainings in courageous conversations and combating disinformation, because you are the best person to shatter the silence and bring truth to the conversation in your own community. All the way up to the political conversation, we have got to start shattering the silence and forcing them to defend their position, because they can't.
For the next months, I think that the Supreme Court is planning on hearing this in October. We'll probably hear what the ruling is next June, likely. How do you not lose hope in between now and then? Like, what are you doing apart from what you were talking about with like removing stigma and trying to shine a light on this issue? Like, how are you keeping your hope alive?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I asked the same question of Senator Cory Booker because I had him on my Instagram live program yesterday, and he's always so great about it. We have to remember that we're carrying the baton in a long arc of history, right? And that at every step in the evolution and progress in this country, we've had to hold not just politicians accountable, but the court, and that they have had to evolve, and they evolve in response to public opinion, right? Like they evolve in response, I should say, to public outcry, and that we've got to make sure that despair doesn't win because that's what they want. I always said this about McConnell's approach to Kavanaugh. Like there are a million ways that they could have gotten what they wanted without letting hundreds of thousands of people organize around this country, carrying it to the last stage, doing the dog and pony show about the investigation, and then voting yes. They did it to teach us that organizing doesn't matter. They did it so we would curl up in a ball and stay home, because that is the only tool you have, is our unwillingness to stand up and fight when you are in the minority. And so I take hope and inspiration from all of our members, all of our staff, all of our allies, all of the people that have been fighting and will continue to fight. And I take inspiration from history, from all of the people I know and all of the people I don't know who lived and died fighting for justice and equality. And all we can hope is to be among their ranks as we carry the baton our distance and then pass it off to other people. This is a lifelong pursuit. It's not a destination, this thing that we call freedom, reproductive freedom, justice, and equality.
Well, that's a great note to end on in a story that feels like a never-ending bummer. Ilyse Hogue, thank you so much for joining us and helping shed a light on what's coming next. And next time we have you back, I hope that it's to have a conversation about something that is a little bit less bleak.
I will look forward to it. Thank you both for what you do. I love your show.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you.